So have you finally found something that works for you, but as soon as you try to scale it, ROAS tanks, and even after you have decreased the budget again for whatever reason, performance just won't jump back? Trust me, you're not the only one that has experienced that with Facebook's advertising platform, and scaling on Facebook actually is an art in itself. So in the following minutes of this video, we're not only going to talk about how to properly scale with your Facebook ads, but we're also going to talk about the reason why your ROAS was just not jump back up even after you've decreased your budget. So with that being said, let's hop straight into it. Hey everybody and welcome back. For those of you who don't know me yet, my name is Victor and I'm the founder of Victory Media, a Facebook marketing agency that exclusively works with e-commerce businesses to help them, increase their returns with Facebook ads and scale their business to the next level. With that being said, scaling has been an issue for most accounts, and even myself has struggled with it for a long time, simply caused by a lack of understanding of the scaling processes when it comes to Facebook. So with this video, I finally want to shed some light on the hundreds of different, sometimes even contradicting statements on what you should do in order to scale profitably with Facebook. Because at the end of the day, once you have understood it, it's actually pretty simple and, easy to scale an ad account from $200 per day to maybe even $2,000 per day. But first, let's talk about why so many people, fail when it comes to scaling. And usually it's caused by two reasons. Where the first is pretty easily to avoid, and the second, not so easy, but we'll come to that as well. So the first reason, which as I said is pretty easily avoidable, is increasing or in general making changes to your ad set, campaign, or ad creative too fast and too abruptly. For you to properly understand this, let's take a look at an example. So this is Alex. Alex has been running ads for a small e-commerce store for a couple of weeks now, and it has been going great. He has above target KPIs and acquiring new customers profitably. Now he wants to scale. He has been running on a daily budget of $50, and now he wants to increase his daily budget to $150. $100 more is what Alex can spend right now and is, more than excited about the results and hopefully increasing revenues. However, unfortunately, Alex's performance dropped significantly 24 hours after he made the change and increase in budget. He lets it run for another 24 hours, but the performance does not seem to pick up. He thinks about all the money he's spending right now, panics, and therefore decreases his budget to the old levels in the hopes of getting the same performance as he did 3 days ago. But against Alex's expectations, performance does not seem to bounce back. Sounds familiar? I thought so. Therefore, to see what Alex did wrong, let's take a step back. Alex increased his campaign budget from $50 to $150, which seems like a reasonable increase considering that his campaign ran successfully for more than a couple of weeks already. However, this is a relative budget increase of 200%. Facebook is based on an auction platform, and this auction platform was bidding with other advertisers at a daily budget of $50. An increase to $60 would have been reasonable in the eyes of this auction platform and would also be more manageable. But any framework overheats at a 200% increase on a daily basis. Therefore, Facebook has to change the audience pool that we're bidding for, and it needs to change the bidding auction from being surrounded by advertisers spending around $50 per day to advertisers that are spending $150 a day. Again, a lot more than Facebook's AI was previously used to. Exactly in this moment when, Facebook had to change their audience pool and, bidding pool from the $50 per day set to the, $150 per day, there is when the second reason for why scaling often fails actually happened. And that is the setback and learning phase. So what is the learning phase? Obviously, we could talk for a whole dedicated video or maybe even a complete course talking just about the learning phase. But, put simply, Facebook's learning phase is pretty much Facebook's AI. And Facebook's AI is super powerful, and you should always, have the main goal of your ad account to not only leverage Facebook's AI, but therefore also accept Facebook's learning phase. So we're not going to have this, discussion about, what you should do in order to exit the learning phase. Neither we're going to talk, a lot about the learning phase itself. If you want to know more about, how important the learning phase actually is in order to properly, run your Facebook ads, then drop a comment below and I'm more than happy to actually record a complete video on that. But for now, let's focus on the 200% increase in budget that Alex just did to his ad sets, which caused the ROAS to tank. So by increasing the budget by about 200%, Alex actually completely reset the learning phase and therefore also reset the complete kind of data feedback and learning that Facebook has already gathered. And therefore, it is pretty natural for Facebook to have a decrease in performance after a change to the ad set or campaign was made, because they have to pretty much relearn, how to deliver the ads profitably at this different scale. So this decrease in overall performance paired with the increase in overall budget that Alex just assigned to the new campaign, would probably give any advertiser that is not necessarily familiar with those processes anxiety out there, and would usually, cause the particular advertiser, founder, or, marketing manager to pull back budgets again. And this is almost the worst thing that people can do. Not necessarily the worst thing, but this is definitely the reason why, even if, you bounce back to your former budgets, usually performance does not really pick up right at the gate again, because as I said, Facebook's learning phase and AI has been set back by making a significant change to your ad set or campaign. And, therefore Facebook kind of, as I said, has to relearn spending at those particular levels. When you then go ahead and panic because of the decrease in performance and actually, pull back budgets again, you actually even increase this, kind of drop in performance, if you will, by again adjusting and making a significant change to your ad set or campaign, which then again leads to a setback in learning phase, which will then cause Facebook's AI to readjust and kind of relearn what this new environment is still, what it's all about. Because for Facebook, it's not, okay, hey, we're back at normal budgets, right? Everything's fine. Facebook is kind of trying to readjust to the newly set budget because this significant change was made. I hope this was pretty understandable. This, kind of the process that I just mentioned is pretty much just a really, really big flywheel where, within a matter of a week sometimes, you go from a campaign that is performing profitably that you want to scale to, actually maybe turning off this campaign completely because you think, hey, nothing is working anymore. I've been trying to scale it. I've been trying to get back to the budget, but for whatever reason, the performance does not seem to pick up again. Therefore, I do have to turn it off right now. So as I said, those are the two reasons which usually cause your ROAS to tank when it comes to scaling your ad account, right? And pretty much it's a domino effect, because the first reason is pretty much, easily avoidable, which is, making a too big of a change too abruptly within your ad account, which then causes a setback in learning phase, which is essentially a flywheel to, really, really just, decreasing the performance of your overall campaign and maybe even, leading your campaign to be turned off in a week or two from now. So any change within your ad set or campaign will actually set back this learning phase. And you might be thinking right now, okay, well, Victor, how should I scale then or make any changes to my ad set if I'm not allowed to do this? So, you obviously want to make, or you need to make changes to your ad set. However, in order to prevent unmitigated disaster, you want to keep those changes, as tiny as possible. So therefore, let's take a look at, two ways on how you can actually scale your ad account and your campaigns while kind of at least managing the impact that this has on your learning phase and your current performance. So at Victory Media, we have two ways to actually scaling a campaign, which is, horizontal scaling and vertical scaling. So what does this mean, and where's the difference between the two scaling methods? So horizontal scaling is pretty much scaling into new and different buyer pools and personas, and we're going to talk about this in particular in just a minute from now. The second scaling method, which is the vertical scaling method, is pretty much what we've just talked about, which is, surely increasing the budget of your, well-performing campaigns and, trying to actually duplicate those or replicate those successes. However, let's first take a look at the, horizontal scaling method. And for you to better understand what goes actually into, scaling horizontally, let's take a look at an example. So Alex, again, has been running a campaign at $50 per day, and it has been performing well and profitable for more than 3 weeks now. So Alex, again, thinks it's scaling time, but he has learned from the last time, so he does not go for the steep budget increase, but first looks at his current campaign settings. He's currently targeting people in the US that are interested in the fitness niche to sell them his new whey protein. So what are the options Alex has at hand now are to scale horizontally. Frankly, the beauty about, scaling horizontally is that it's a lot more creative and can a lot of times scale your business more sustainably. So therefore, let's take a look at 3 example options Alex could consider right now in order to, as I said, scale horizontally. So first of all, you could take a successful campaign, duplicate it, change the country from targeting only the US to targeting the US, UK, Australia, and Canada, which are also called the Tier 4 country if his supply chain allows him to do so. However, if his supply chain does not necessarily withhold this change, then another option might be easier to implement logistically, and that is not changing, the geographical settings rather than the angle. Alex has been running a successful campaign mainly with an ad creative that displayed men working out with, an ad copy mainly targeting men. He could therefore, again, duplicate the campaign, leave everything the same when it comes to the, targeting settings, but focus on his messaging angle more towards, the female targeting audience by staring women instead of men and talking about becoming fit rather than having a huge biceps. And lastly, he could also take a successful campaign, again, duplicate it, and run maybe a different and more appealing offer. Where he then combines the whey protein with his protein shaker for only, half the price of the protein shaker. This will not only increase its average order value, but also might interest a different and even more valuable cohort of customers. Either way, those are just different options that, Alex could use in order to scale horizontally, which, as I said, is pretty much just scaling into different buyer pools where, you could then actually reach out to new people that might have not really been interested in, the advertisement that you've been running previously, but with your new offer or new geographical settings, or maybe even new messaging angle, you can then actually tap into that audience and, kind of replicate your successes. Pro tip, I usually and personally, prefer horizontal scaling instead of vertical scaling. The reason for this is not it's because it's a little less risky, but it's also a lot more creative. And when it comes to vertical scaling and just sheerly increasing your budget, you naturally will have kind of, more of a tipping point where then probably you will not really be able to scale, any further without a decrease in performance or a decrease in cost per acquisition. With horizontal scaling, you, as I said, scale a lot more sustainably since you're broadening out the people that you're reaching out to and broadening out the, buyer personas that you're reaching with, your brand, your product, and your offers. However, comparing vertical and, horizontal scaling, let's actually talk about vertical scaling real quick, because this is essentially, what Alex did in the first example that we showed, and that is, pretty much just increasing your budget on the campaign. However, since we're already comparing the horizontal scaling with the, vertical scaling method, let's actually quickly take a look at the vertical scaling method that, pretty much is, what Alex has been desperately trying to do in order to, to increase his budgets and to scale his ad accounts and campaigns performance in the first example that we showed. In order for you to better understand how to properly use, vertical scaling, let's take a look at another example. So Alex scales his campaign in, one day from $50 to $150, which is an increase of 200%. And, he did this by simply editing the budget of his campaign. This is a form of vertical scaling that provides too much risk, and therefore I would never do this to avoid the scenario that Alex encountered in this example. When you're editing the budget of your already existing campaign, then you should never have a larger increase than 30%. Better, 20% per day. Meaning Alex should have increased his campaign budget not from 50 to 150, but from 50 to a maximum of $65 to save more like $60. Then you should leave it running for 24 to 48 hours and take a look at his, lifetime performance, but more importantly, factor in the performance of the last 7 and 3 days. If the campaign continues to perform well, you can then just again increase the campaign's budget by 20 to 30%. Maybe you'll be thinking right now, okay, well, Victor, but that takes ages. Let's just take a look at an example for you to see how quickly you can ramp up budgets by using this, pretty, incremental increases. So Alex starts out with a $50 budget and scales it by 20% to $60 per day on day 1. On day 3, performance stayed the same, so he again scales his daily budget from $60 to $75. On day 5, performance still looks good, so he again increases the budget to $90. He continues to do so until he sees a plateau in performance after day 18 and finally at a budget of $230. So this scaling method is not only less risky when it comes to, the Facebook end of things, but also especially when you come onto like a little bit more of the higher budget where we're not talking about, $50 per day rather than, $1,000 or $2,000 per day, then your operations, are just not able to, withhold this increase of 100% of budget increase or whatsoever. And therefore, not only from a Facebook end of things, but also from an operational end of things, it's a lot more feasible to go with those incremental but steady budget increase. So long story short, vertical, scaling is pretty much the same thing that Alex did in the first example. However, by making, instead of making a huge change just at once, you go ahead and start incrementally scaling your budget as soon as you plateau with your performance. Apart from the Facebook ads, part, also your operations and supply chain, have more time to actually get used to the spike in performance, and therefore probably you're not going to suffer in any way from customer satisfaction or customer experience. However, let's say for whatever reason, Alex actually needs to increase his budget from today to next week by, let's say, 200%. and therefore the incremental, vertical scaling method is not necessarily an option. And for whatever reason, horizontal scaling is also not necessarily feasible because he is, lacking manpower, or because of any supply chain issues, not able to provide a new product or whatsoever. So let's just take this as an example real quick. Now actually Alex is in a kind of a dilemma because he can't use either of the scaling methods that we have just talked about. So what should Alex do right now? Easy. You should pretty much just in a way combine those scaling methods. However, at the end of the day, it's still more of a vertical scaling method than horizontal scaling method. So what do I mean with that? So instead of trying to just scale your budget by 200% while editing the already running and successful campaign, you follow the rule of never touch something that is already working. Therefore, then, instead of going ahead and editing the budget of the already successful campaign, you actually go ahead and duplicate the campaign and, kind of increase the budget of the newly duplicated campaign from $50 to just $100, which will then also lead to a 200% increase in, total ad account daily budget. So there you have it right there. You've pretty much mitigated your risk, because if this campaign does not really perform pretty well, then you still have your $50 campaign performing successfully and not really being impacted by the huge increase in change or whatsoever. So you can rest assured that probably, since you've left the successful and performing campaign untouched, that this will continue to perform at those levels. However, note that this is only really possible at lower budget. So if you are, for example, running at a $2,000 per day budget and you're trying to get this to a $6,000 per day, daily budget within a matter of a couple of days, and you try it by just duplicating your campaigns and running it to towards the same target audiences with the same ad creative, then you might even actually run into a lot of audience overlap, which will then cause your campaigns to perform against each other and outbid each other, which then usually increases your cost to deliver to prospects and consumers on Facebook, which will then usually and ultimately lead to a higher cost per purchase, which can then also lead to an overall cost increase for your whole ad account. As you can see, there's no secret button to profitably scaling your Facebook ads. And like so often, it's just really about following principles and guidelines and ultimately testing in order to reach the next level within your ad account. So before we call it a day now, one quick thing. If you're currently struggling with your Facebook ads performance and you think some outside help could actually do the job, then we might be a good fit. At my agency, Victory Media, we help e-commerce brands, an e-commerce brand exclusively, that are making between $150,000 and $10 million in annual revenue to scale their business to the next level with the help of Facebook's advertising platform. It is a done-for-you Facebook marketing solution where we kind of take over your ad account and do not only, focus on the, successful launch, creation, and scaling of ad campaigns, but also make sure that you have a proper ad creative strategy in place that, actually talks about the benefits of your product and brand. So what we've just talked about in the last 10 to 15 minutes, this is pretty much what we do on a daily basis and specialize in. We can, maneuver your brand through those uncharted waters. And apart from our Facebook growth experts, we also have 15 graphic designers working, day and night to make sure that our clients' creatives are on par and cutting edge with Facebook's, creative best practices up to date. With that being said, if you think that this might be of interest to you, then head down to the first link in the description and schedule into, your free 30-minute discovery call with me personally. On this call, we will not only talk, how we operate or what our cost structure looks like, but we will also particularly talk about your growth hurdles, and how you could potentially, outmaneuver them, and what we could potentially do in order to help you by doing that. With that being said, either way, I hope that this video was of any help for you, and as a little token of appreciation for me taking the time out of my day, I hope you can give me a thumbs up and maybe subscribe to the channel below to stay up to date with the most current Facebook ads and e-commerce growth trends. On that note, thank you for watching, and I hope I'll catch you in the next one. Keep growing. Thank you so much for watching the video to this point. I know that if you've come this far, that you form a part of an exclusive group of people that do not only talk, but walk the talk, and that you are hungry for more content. So therefore, I went ahead and picked out an exclusive video just for you that I know you're going to love. Check it out right here.